a lot of organizing going on both inside of prisons and by those outside, and not just in Alabama, but also all around the South, where individuals are converging around some critical issues for those who are incarcerated in the state of Alabama. So we are very, very honored to be joined here on the show to discuss all about this by Cecilia Prado, who's the chair of Luta Sigue and also a mentor of the Tennessee Student Solidarity Network, and Kumar, who's a co-founder of the Tennessee Student Solidarity Network. Thank you both so much for being with us.
Thank you. We're very excited to be here.
Well, it's really an honor to have you all here. I mean, this is it's a story that I think I wish many more people knew about. I'm curious both your thoughts about this. Maybe Cecilia, I'll start with you. But give us a sense of what the conditions people are facing here in prisons in Alabama that's causing them to organize inside for their rights.
Wow. Alabama are the most deadly and most overcrowded prisons in the country. And I will say they're also some of the most anti-Black and anti-trans. We're talking about nitrogen gas executions. We're talking about 3 people in 2023 getting their organs stolen, right? When their bodies were returned to their families after they died in custody. We're talking about 1 person on average dying at the prisons every year in 2023. And we're also talking about 4%, only 4% of Black applicants for parole in 2023 actually receive parole. Why? Because there's also in Alabama a massive hidden network of a very profitable modern day slavery system that is making the Alabama Department of Corrections about $500 million a year. As they are leasing, incarcerated people are organizing shutdowns, and this time they're trying to organize a long-term shutdown of Alabama prisons to hit at the inhumane conditions, the deadly abuse, the torture they're experiencing, and also the prison labor system that holds a significant economic weight here in Alabama, and I would say the whole Southeast.
Some of the things you just mentioned are so horrific. You're talking about essentially slavery in prison when we talk about prison labor, and also some of the horrors that exist inside the prison. Some of the things that are taking place are as horrific as organs missing. Can you talk a bit more about the conditions that you're speaking about, just to elaborate, just to give people an idea? We're not, these aren't just a one-off thing. It's happening to one person here and one person there. There's a system of consistent and routine abuse taking place inside of these prisons.
Yes, definitely. We are talking about, first, this is one of the most overcrowded prisons in the prison systems in the country. People are not being granted parole. Why? Because they are making money for these companies and they're making money for the Department of Corrections. So what happens when you have an understaffed prison system with a wealth of many, many people, basically becoming labor warehouses, right? Alabama prisons are basically labor warehouses. That's how the Free Alabama movement, the organization that is leading the organizing on the ground, has described it. They have this work release program that technically is supposed to be optional, but it's not, right? We're talking about a place where nobody gets parole. So, and it gets sold to the incarcerated people as a chance to get parole. If they do not participate in this work release program, if they do not show up to work and make profits for these corporations, they might experience rape, they might experience abuse. We are seeing that the officers are looking the other way whenever fentanyl is introduced inside the prisons. But when organizers and incarcerated people decide to organize and decide to withhold their labor, when that happens, they might get thrown in solitary confinement for several months. We're talking about 5 to 8 months in solitary confinement. We're talking about moving them into facilities where they're certainly going to get raped. We're talking about beatings by officers, nearly beating incarcerated people to death, or people who have been killed by officers on the inside. And so these are horrific conditions. They're inhumane, but it is also a fight that is not just moral, but it should concern to us as the working class, because this is all part of a concerted effort to expand capitalism, to expand the amount of super exploited labor that we're seeing, and that should concern us as a class.
Mm-hmm. Well, Indu, let me ask you sort of a two-part question here. I mean, I think the first part is talk a little bit about some of the organizing that is going on, both in the inside and the solidarity work that folks are doing on the outside. But also, I'd be curious to hear why it was important for you, what moved you and those students you're working with to get involved.
That's a great question. So basically, Cecilia has been following the work of the Free Alabama movement, and as y'all said, they're one of my biggest mentors. And what really drew us to the work of the Free Alabama movement is how organized they are, even in the face of such intense repression. If you go to the Free Alabama movement's YouTube, you can see videos of the types of beatings that people are receiving for organizing on the inside. And in spite of all this, in the past, they've been able to organize the largest shutdown of prisons in U.S. history. And what has been different with the protests that they're organizing now versus in the past is the amount of outside support they're starting to get. And a lot of that has come from younger college-age students or young people in general. So last Saturday, we had 40 people gather from all around the South. A lot of them were college-age students from MTSU, Fisk, Vanderbilt, universities from across the South, and also an organization known as the Young Palestinians of Birmingham. And I think young people are really fed up with the ways that nonprofits or electoralism has kind of eaten up organizing. And we're seeing what actual revolutionary organizing closest to the means of production looks like, because, like Cecilia is saying, people on the inside are manufacturing super profits for companies like Wendy's, KFC, McDonald's. And so one way we can attack the issue that Palestinians, for example, are facing is by boycotting companies like McDonald's. But wouldn't it be more effective for us to align ourselves with people that are at the root of production for a company like McDonald's? And that's why you're seeing students who care about all these different types of issues like mass incarceration. After 2020, so many people got politicized by the issue of mass incarceration and police brutality. And now so many young people are getting politicized on the issue of Palestine. But we have to realize that these issues aren't separate. And what the Free Alabama movement is doing for us is synthesizing these issues and showing us what a real revolutionary working class movement can look like, led by the people that are most oppressed. If we want to be serious about issues like prison abolition, we have to pay real attention to the people that are directly impacted and let them lead. And this is something that is said a lot in movements, but not actually executed upon. And why I think students are so drawn to this is because we are following the leadership of the Free Alabama movement, of people on the inside. They are facing intense repression, and even in the midst of that, they're doing political education. They're fighting rape culture. Like, they're doing all these really serious things. And us on the outside, we have to learn from these movements. Otherwise, if we're not disciplined in these same ways, we're not going to be able to fight for the things that we want to. And I think that's why so many young people are realizing, one, the complicity of universities in the pain that people on the inside are facing. UAB in Birmingham was responsible for harvesting organs from people on the inside. And two, you can read, like Angela Davis talks about how so much public university furniture is being produced by people on the inside, for example. So one, universities are complicit, but two, we're realizing that we need to follow a movement with real leadership, real discipline, and a political vision. And they are saying, we want to shut down these prisons for no less than 90 days. We want to lead one of the biggest movements that this country will probably ever see. And they are the most oppressed people, the most directly impacted people with a clear vision. And so I don't see how young people couldn't want to join this movement. And I hope more and more that more students from across the South, more young people from across the South will come out and stand in solidarity with the people protesting at St. Clair and now at more and more prisons across Alabama.
I'm curious when you talk about organizing. Obviously, one of the most difficult places to do that isn't a prison because a prison is such a controlled environment. It's kind of a very fascist environment. So I'm just curious if you can also speak to and maybe Cecilia, you can take this, or maybe both of you can, but the difficulty, just to give people an idea, when we talk about organizing actual prisoners and prisoners being able to participate in actions, a lot goes into that. That's not an easy thing to do under these circumstances.
Absolutely. And we are also talking about a 90-day shutdown. And when the Free Alabama movement first announced that they were planning to go on strike, it was on February 6th. Several prisons were committed, but they were only willing to do it for a span of 3 days. And so the Free Alabama movement decided to call it off and to instead focus on one prison at a time, St. Clair, where there's a lot of abuse happening, and having this longer term effort and inviting other prisons to join, but only if they agree to go for a span of 90 days. That is 90 days where you might get death threats, where you might get physically assaulted by the officers in retaliation, where you might be placed in solitary confinement, right? So you need to be thinking about the level of determination of sacrifice that folks are willing to take to organize on the inside. And when we're saying on the inside, we're not advocating for people on the outside to go in and organize the folks that are incarcerated. Because the folks that are incarcerated, they're already organized. And when we're saying we're listening to people that are most oppressed, we're not saying just random individuals. We're talking about an organization with a clear vision that has been organizing with remarkable resilience and effectiveness for over 11 years under unimaginable repression and conditions. And we really need to start taking some lessons of that. We are seeing that on the outside, a lot of the movements that will call themselves like abolitionist movements or movements against mass incarceration or against police brutality, they have not worked. And we need to start assessing why haven't we worked? Why are so many organizations imploding within a matter of 2 months? And we are seeing organizations like the Free Alabama movement stay resilient and stay constant and stay powerful. And we're seeing that there's a lot of layers to that, including the fact that the Free Alabama movement is using clear intentional structures, centralized strategy, leadership development that is rigorous, and an immense amount of just willingness to engage in sacrifice to be able to win. I think those are very valuable lessons that we can take from them.
Mm-hmm. Well, Indu, let me ask you one thing as well here that is also kind of made news, and I'm curious if it's also becoming an issue in terms of the organizing by incarcerated folks and everyone supporting them, is this issue of these nitrogen gas executions in the state of Alabama, which I think the world is sort of shocked and horrified with that they're now using this to execute people. Is this also one of the pieces that's being discussed in this organizing?
Yeah, so they have 5 key demands, which you can check out on their Twitter, Free Ala Movement. And one of them is, of course, abolishing nitrogen gas executions. Another one, for example, is getting rid of juvenile detention without parole, getting rid of life without parole. These are truly inhumane conditions that are being imposed upon mostly Black incarcerated people and mostly Black Southerners across the South. And these conditions just can't be allowed to keep going. There's been testimonies from people who watched Kenny Smith while he was passing because of the sentence he received. And all the testimonies have been just a testament to how bad and how inhumane these policies are and how targeted they are at certain populations in the South. And we can't stand by and let this keep happening. We can't stand by and let fascism keep getting worse and worse. And that's why, again, following the lead of the people who are seeing and experiencing these conditions firsthand is so important. We don't have the solutions. We don't have the answers for how to counter this type of repression, but the people who are closest to the profits that are being made off of this type of insane repression and these conditions are the ones who can show us what methods we have to follow to actually counter this. Because we're seeing this across the country, whether it's in blue states or in red states, this type of repression is escalating, this type of policing is escalating, and these types of consequences are escalating. And we can't counter this through legislative means alone. And so the Free Alabama movement provides us with a real way to meet the demands of the most oppressed, the people who are getting incarcerated, and gives us real methodology to follow in which to counter this type of repression. And so you can check out the full list of demands on their Twitter or on our account, on our Instagram at Tennessee Student Solidarity Network. But I really encourage you to read their manifesto, Let the Crops Rot, which was written in 2016, where they explain the kind of their strategy, their failures they've assessed and figured out what they have to do to keep winning. And that kind of organization is exactly what Cecilia is talking about.
Well, I really appreciate y'all joining to help us bring some light to this. We'll keep covering it, the work that's going on, very important. Cecilia, Prado, and Kumar, thank you so much for giving us some of your time here in the Freedom Side.